Well, I am not Pastor Barry, of course. Pastor Barry has had his knee replaced. Things are going well. It must be good. If his nurse is here, he must be fine. No, she probably sent him to bed, is really what happened. As he is recovering, surgery went well. Things are good. Everybody's good, right, Colleen? Yeah, no problem. So, yes, his nurse is here singing with us, so that means it's good stuff. But I'm excited to be sharing with you in our sermon series. We at Living Hope, of course, do sermon series around here. We thought we picked one that would probably last 8 weeks, and as I've been talking with other people and Pastor Barry and anyone who's preaching during this sermon series, is like, hey, it's going to be a lot longer than that. I don't think he realizes that yet. But I'm excited because we are talking about the kings, the priests, and the prophets. And of course, we are in 1 Kings, and we are on sermon 3 of that series. Last week, Pastor Barry actually 2 weeks ago, broke it down that the first 11 chapters of 1 Kings are all about Solomon's reign. And Solomon's reign was a good one, and we'll see that that's not always the case with all the kings. But during Solomon's reign, he talked about last week how Solomon came to power and how that David, along with the priest Nathaniel and Zodiac the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benadad the general, they all appointed his son that he had with Bathsheba, mind you, Solomon, to be the king. And this morning, as we look at the big thing that Solomon is known for, it's this word right here, wisdom. And the big thing that I want us to grab hold of and grab from this sermon this morning is that wisdom was granted because Solomon asked for it. And you'll see that in chapter 3 and in verse 4. But I need to be honest with you and tell you a little bit about what's gone on in my life. We are in an interesting transition. I've never really done this before, but I part-time signed up to teach U.S. history and science to middle schoolers here at OCA. And I was sitting there reminiscing and thinking about all the great teachers that I've had at all different levels, minus the junior high level, but at elementary school level and high school level and collegiate level. And I was thinking about those good teachers that I would like to try to strive for and be like them. And I'm remembered of one professor in Bible college who taught church history. And on day one, he would come in and go, "I'm Professor Friesen. I teach church history, and you're in Church History 101. I'll teach all the church histories." It took 4 years of it, essentially. And so I had him for 4 years, and I remember thinking, oh man, this guy's voice, like, it was that dry. And then you start to realize that he's one of the professors that not only will help make sure you get the material and understand what's going on, but he was the guy that was out there hanging out with the students, coffee and hockey. But for whatever reason, his first couple moments, he would always treat the students in that dry voice. And then out of nowhere, he'd kind of smack the table and go, "I need you to know something. There are dumb questions. So be careful what you ask. Think about what you'd ask," he would say. And then he would proceed to tell the story, and he gave a perfect example. And every year he'd have a new example. But my favorite example was that he spent a summer in Turkey, and he got to go to Ephesus and stood where Paul stood in the ruins of this temple, and it's just massive ruins. And you can see, look up pictures of it. It's called St. Paul in Ephesus. And he's standing there on a tour with a tour guide and some college kids. And he's there, and he's sitting there going, "Oh no, don't do it." And one of the college kids raises a hand and asks a stupid question. And the stupid question was, "Hey, are there any plans to rebuild?" Rebuild the ruin? No, it's a dumb question. And so, as that story runs through my brain as I'm starting teaching, I'm a little bit more lenient with the middle schoolers because they still continue to ask dumb questions, but we love them. I'm always thinking about the word ask, and I'm thinking about it in the context of this, and the fact that wisdom was granted to Solomon because he asked. So this morning, as we look at three things, we look at Solomon and who he is, and the wisdom that he obtained through the chapter 3, and then we see that he puts that wisdom to use right away. So, in 1 Kings chapter 3, it's quite a bit of reading, so bear with me here. But it is so good, so good. So Solomon made an alliance with Pharaoh king of Egypt, and married his daughter. He brought her to the city of David until he finished building his place and temple of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. The people, however, were still sacrificing at the high places because the temple had not yet been built for the name of the Lord. Solomon showed his love for the Lord by walking according to the instructions given to him by his father David, except that he offered sacrifice and burnt incense on the high places. The king went to Gibeon to offer sacrifice, for that was the most important high place. And Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night, and in a dream, God asked, "For whatever you want me to give to you." Solomon answered, "You have shown great kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued this great kindness to him and have given him a son to sit on his throne this very day. Now the Lord, my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David. But I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people, to distinguish between right and wrong, for who is able to govern this great people of yours?" The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, "Since you have asked for this, and not for long life or for wealth for yourself, nor have asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment and administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never be anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. And if you walk in obedience to me and keep my decrees and commands, as David your father did, I will give you long life." Then Solomon awoke, and he realized it had been a dream. He returned to Jerusalem, stood before the ark of the Lord's covenant, sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then he gave a feast for all of his court. So a couple observations in this story. We see right off the bat that Solomon already had some sort of smarts and some wisdom, because he married a smart political move in marrying Pharaoh's daughter. Egypt was a world power at the time. If he had married Pharaoh's daughter, Egypt is unlikely to attack the Israelites. And so he had some sort of wisdom in that regard. He was building the city of Jerusalem back up, and the walls of Jerusalem back up, and the temple back up. And he was walking with God just like his father. And he was the third king of Israel. He was appointed by his own dad. And there was a contestation, but it wasn't a whole lot of contesting the crown when it came to Solomon. But the temple wasn't finished, and it was time to sacrifice. And being that the temple wasn't finished, he kind of followed along with what was told of him, which was we go and sacrifice in a high place. So he went up to Gibeon, and Gibeon was a distance away to the point where they couldn't walk and then walk back in a day. So he spent the night, after sacrificing thousands, by the way, and worshiping God, it said thousands, burnt offering. He then goes up and falls asleep and has this dream. And God comes to him and says, "Hey, ask for anything and I'll give it to you." And Solomon doesn't do the whole, "Oh man, it's like a genie. I got that one wish and I'm going to make it good." The first thing that Solomon does in response to going, "Ask for anything," is he gives God praise for all the things that he's already given him and his family, that he has set him up for. God shows up in this dream and goes, "Hey, what do you want?" And he goes, "Hey, you're awesome and great. Let's not talk about what I want. I want to praise you." And Solomon, realizing that he is in a place where, okay, I've given you praise and you're not responding. I don't know if it was one of those things where he said, "Well, you're great, you're awesome, we love you, thank you for giving this and blessing us so much," and it was kind of crickets, and God just kind of like quietly waiting like I do sometimes with my kids for the actual response I wanted. I don't think it was necessarily that, but then he realized, well, he's asking, he's asking what I want, so I should tell him. And even though like I said, he had some smarts to him, as a young man who now is the king of Israel, and his primary job is to figure out what's right and what's wrong. He is the judge, jury, and executioner. And he doesn't feel as though he doesn't feel adequate enough in making the right decisions. So what does he do? He asked for discerning wisdom. He asked for a discerning heart. He asked for a discerning heart. And that word right there is chokmah. Chokmah. And it translated everywhere else, NIV likes the word discerning heart. NASB, a bunch of other versions of the Bible, we have all those versions, right? They like the word wisdom. And it really kind of goes hand in hand, and it has the word insight is another word that's translated, or skill to it. And so he asked for this discerning heart, this chokmah, this wisdom, this skill. He asked for it, and God, in that dream, says, because you asked for that, I'm going to give you other things too. Because you have the wherewithal to ask for the right thing in wisdom, I'm also going to reward you with wealth and long life if you continue to follow after me. So God gave him that ability. And as he woke up, he probably thought it was, it's just a dream. He didn't really think anything of it. It's not like he woke up and went, I feel a lot smarter today. He went back, and he went back to where the Holy of Holies is, the temple that was being built, but the Holy of Holies was still there, and he did another sacrifice. He worshiped again and praised again. And he threw a big party for all of his servants and the people in his court. And we see that God presented Solomon with an opportunity. Now you might be sitting there going, well, this is Solomon, this is Old Testament, it's Israel's history. What about me? We flash forward thousands of years earlier, and we see Matthew, Jesus, talking. And Matthew records Matthew chapter 7. He says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. For anyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds. And the one who knocks, the door will be open. I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that there are moments in which where God's constantly just going, hey, ask and I'll give it to you, whatever it is. But I am telling you that Jesus is sitting there going, you need to ask. You need to ask. And Solomon realized this thousands of years before Jesus would come along. And when he's approached with the opportunity, he takes it, and he takes and makes the mature decision. He makes the smart choice, and he picks wisdom. Now, as a 16-year-old to 22-year-old, I don't know if I would have made that choice in wisdom. Not because I didn't have any. Most of the people can contest that have knew me back when I was 16, 17, 18. I was making some pretty good decisions in my life. Not always the best, but pretty good ones. Pretty good, yeah. See, I became friends with the Tuggles. That was a good decision, right? Well, jury's still out. And what's so interesting is culturally, I was sitting there thinking about it. If 16 to 22-year-old males had a little bit more wisdom, how would the world be different? I remember thinking about during that time going, man, my one goal was to not die. Like, that was the one rule we had. Don't do anything that's going to get yourself killed. Like, you were trying as best as you could, 16 to 20, to make something of yourself and push the limits. And 20 years ago, as I am 40 now, making all of you guys feel really old. I know, rough, right? Yeah. I sit there and think about what I would have responded to God with. And Solomon had the maturity, had the wherewithal, had some form of knowledge to go, I need a discerning heart. A discerning heart. The ability to tell right from wrong. And immediately after, God grants him that, and he goes and worships again, and he has a party again. That is tested. his right from wrong. We keep reading in Kings chapter 3, verse 16. Now 2 prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. One of them said, "Pardon me, my lord, this woman and I live in the same house, and I had a baby while she was there with me. And 3 days after my child was born, this woman also had a baby. We were alone. There was no one else in the house but the 2 of us. During the night, the woman's son died because she laid on him. She got up in the middle of the night and took my son from my side while your servant was asleep. She put him by her breast and put her dead son by my breast. The next morning, I got up to nurse my son, and he was dead. But when I looked at him closely in the morning light, I saw that it wasn't the son I had born." The other woman said, "No, the living one is my son, the dead one is yours." But the first one insisted, "No, the dead one is yours, and the living one is mine." And so they argued before the king. Solomon's at a point where now he needs to use that muscle that God just gave him between right and wrong. And this is his job. Part of being a king is this: discerning how to deal with a tough situation, discerning who's right, who's wrong. What does he do? The king said, this one says, "My son is alive and your son is dead," while the other says, "No, your son is dead and mine is alive." The king said, "Bring me a sword." So they brought a sword for the king. He then gave an order, "Cut the living child in 2 and give half to one and half to the other." The woman whose son was alive was deeply moved out of love for her son and said to the king, "Please, my lord, just give her the living baby. Don't kill him." The other said, "Neither I nor you shall have him. Cut him in 2." The king gave his ruling. Give the living baby to the first woman. Do not kill him. She is his mother. When all Israel heard that the verdict that the king had given, they held the king in awe because they saw that he had wisdom from God to administer justice. And Solomon, right away, his wisdom, his discerning heart, his chokmah was tested. Now, a couple of observations. He had 2 women, 2 different stories. He said, she said. The fact that this woman thought she can get away with it because I'm pretty sure my wife would be able to pick our kids out no matter what stage of life they're in, let alone 3 days born. It was just crazy to think that she can get away with this. But the fact that Solomon had a way and developed a way to prove it, because a real mother would never let harm come to their kid, even if that meant that kid went to another mother to live with. And he had that discerning heart to outsmart this terrible woman who lied, who stole, who kidnapped, tried to get away with it, to outsmart everyone. But that chokmah gave him the wisdom to make the right ruling. When he asked for something in the wisdom and discerning heart, he had to use it right away. Let me ask you a question. Any of you ever want a physical thing in life and you wanted it so bad and you finally got it as a gift and you just left it in its box or where it was? Colleen's raising her hand. She's a little crazy then. My dad calls me on the phone. He's in real estate and he goes, "Hey, you have to come see this house. They have the coolest thing." And I was just like, "Okay, all right, sure. I got a spare 15 minutes. It's in town. It's not that big of a deal." And I drive up to this house. I get out and I walk inside. And inside were Star Wars action figures in their original packaging. Ooh, yeah. The nerds in the room go, ooh. This young man who lived in this house for years received gifts, spent his hard-earned money, all of these things on Star Wars toys that are plastic. And he never once opened them up. From the time he was 3 to 4, he was receiving Star Wars toys up until he's now my age in his 40s. And he never once used the gifts that were ever given to him. And most of you might be like, well, he's probably sitting on a boatload of cash. Well, I have some news for him, and I didn't want to break it to him, and I didn't want to tell my dad. Yeah, it's not the coolest, Dad, because these were toys made in the 90s and the 2000s. They're worth about the same amount was spent on them, even in new shape. So maybe 50 to 100 years from now, and his grandkids can benefit from that. But he just missed out on all the fun. He missed out on the gifts. And I started to think about that, going, man, if Solomon hadn't operated under that gift of discernment, that woman would have gotten away with it. She would have gotten away with borderline murdering her own child and then lying and kidnapping. And Solomon's wisdom, his chokmah, changed lives. It did. He shared that wisdom with the people. In Kings, we go on to Kings 4. We see that God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight, and breatheth of an understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the people of the East, and greater than the wisdom of Egypt. He was wiser than anyone else, including Ethan the Ezrahite, wiser than Heman, Calco, and Darda, the sons of Mal. And his fame spread to all the surrounding nations. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. I don't know why they had to throw that in, but they did. He spoke about plant life, the cedar of Lebanon, to the hyssop that grows out of the walls. He also spoke about animals and birds, reptiles and fish. From all the nations, people came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, sent by all the kings of the world who had heard of his wisdom. He became known for his wisdom. He became known for his wisdom. The world knew his name. He wrote Proverbs. He wrote Song of Solomon's. High schoolers, don't read that book yet. And countless other psalms and songs. He spoke and knew things of nature and the natural world. His wisdom surpassed any other person's. It's what he was known for. That's what he was known for. And so this morning, as I have read through 1 Kings 3 and 4, and I see a couple of application points, and you're like, oh, we're to the application. Yeah, but there's a lot of meat here, so it might take me a little bit. Know this, that I firmly believe what I said in Matthew chapter 7 is true, that we need to ask. God came to Solomon and said, what do you want? He asked him, sure. But Jesus tells us to ask. And then later we see in James chapter 4, you do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. And we see James presents us with this idea of asking. And there's a lot of debate among theological circles about God actually changing his mind in response to your prayers. Some would say that he never changes his mind, while others would say, it's part of the first plan. It was always there. Others go to the extreme and say God cannot or will not do anything unless we ask. James 4 isn't really addressing that larger issue. It simply says that if there's something we want, we need to ask God for it. Instead of trying to do it ourselves, or dare I say, resulting in ungodly means. It stands to reason that there are some things that we will not get unless we ask for them. But if we ask, we will receive them. So if there's something we want, we need to ask. And Christians, the best way we ask, Living Hopers, the best way we ask, the best way we seek him is through prayer. It is. It's through prayer. And what I see here is we see that Solomon, his ask was for wisdom. His ask was for wisdom. But I also think we have to understand that Solomon asked for the right thing, for the right situation. Solomon asked for the right situation. In his case, it was wisdom. I didn't stay up late, so I don't know, but I didn't go to God asking for the $1.8 billion Powerball. because I was asking. That'd be just asking for the wrong thing. Listen, what James was talking about in 4, you do not have because you do not ask, doesn't guarantee that we'll get everything we ask also. People get frustrated with that. I asked and he didn't give it to me. It's like a father telling his child not to steal anything from the tool shed, but to just ask for something if they want. And then say my 6-year-old comes to me and goes, hey, can I have the chainsaw? And the father, for safety reasons, is not going to give it to him. Including the $1.8 billion for safety reasons, God didn't give it to me. Plus, guess what? I didn't spend any money on tickets. Likewise, when we ask God for something, he deserves the right to know what's best for us. He deserves the right to know what's best for us. James also brings up another situation where God may not grant that request at all. When you ask and you do not receive because you're asking with wrong motives, that you might spend it on yourself. So while it is better to ask God for things than to scheme and to fight and try to get them on your own accord, those requests that are still selfish at the root, God tends to deny. The bottom line is, when you want something, you need to ask, and you need to let God decide what's best for you. You do. It covers a multitude of problems. When Solomon asked for wisdom, he had the good wherewithal to now understand from here on out what's right and what's wrong, what's sinful, what's not. The decisions he made were all of this, and it caused common sense, street smarts, if you will, to increase in Solomon. He asked for the right thing. The other thing that I see is when you do ask and God grants you something, be ready to use it borderline right away. Right away. Just like Solomon, he asked, he got it, and immediately had to use that discerning wisdom. We are all called to share good and godly wisdom. If that is something God is giving you and granting to you, I'd ask you guys to share it with others. That's why Pastor Barry does what he does, because God has granted him wisdom. And he stands up here almost every Sunday and shares good godly wisdom to all of us. And it's something we're all called to do. The giftings that we've been given. My wife is a smart woman, and she has her own wisdom, and she has a great discerning spirit, and she gets that. But one of the things that she's really good at being friendly. Me, not so much. And her friendliness is something that is desirable that people like to be around. And so, when you ask God for something and he grants it to you, be ready to give it away. Be ready to give it away. Strangers are going to be drawn towards it. I put off getting a haircut this week, and I should have, so it looked good for you guys on the internet, sure, whatever. But I put it off because I didn't want to sit in that chair and have that woman ask me what's going on in my life. I'll confess that to you and to God. Because they ask every single time, and I go, oh, I'm preaching this Sunday. And I can't lie, and I have to tell them, and I have to talk to them, and I have to offer some sort of conversation. That's what I mean by I'm not friendly. I don't want to do this, right? And strangers will be drawn towards that wisdom. Especially since a good chunk of the time it's out of the box thinking. Sitting on the sidelines watching my kid play flag football, I should have been paying more attention, but there was a conversation happening with a couple of other moms. And one mom who I know, love, and trust had made the decision to kind of go, no, we don't do this. Our family doesn't do this. We don't operate this way. And the other mom was like kind of taken back by it, like, what are you talking about? Yeah, you can use credit cards to buy things. It's okay. And I was sitting there going, man, that is such an out-of-the-box way of thinking, and it's so good that you're sharing it, because now it opens the door for people to understand that we have something that they don't, and that's good, godly, discerning wisdom. Godly wisdom, the chokmah. It's desirable to the world. It's desirable to the world. Insight, common sense, that's street smarts. And we need to know that it's desirable to the world because it's lacking common sense. It's lacking common sense. It's lacking a lot of value too. And that common sense leads to good and better choices, discerning hearts, right and wrong. And the world sees that. The world sees that. The end goal is to love the Lord with all your heart, right? But love your neighbor as yourself is right there. And they see the chokmah, and it becomes desirable to us all. And we're supposed to be dragging as many people to heaven. And we're supposed to be ready to give that testimony of how we are different. And it's because of this discerning chokmah. It's desirable to the world. God wants to and is ready to give you things when you ask. And whether it's wisdom like Solomon, he knew that he needed to ask for wisdom, or it's another trait that you deeply desire to want to grow in, he will give it to you. James 4 said, you have not because you do not ask. Would you pray with me? God, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for a time in which we can spend reading your word. And how we see in Solomon's life, you approached him and said, what do you want? And he responded with discerning wisdom. He responded with the right answer. Because you gave him that wisdom, but then you gave him much more as well. So God, help us and remind us to continually be asking you for things. We come to you, and then not to be upset when we are not granted those things. Because God, we understand and know that you know what's best for us. Because you love us so much. I think back to the picture of me giving gifts to my children and how you want to give gifts to your children too, God. So God, as we come to you and as we ask, help us to ask for the right things. Help us to ask and know and understand that we trust you enough to know that you give us the things that we need. God, that we also know that the world is going to see the wisdom that you continue to give to each and every person in this room. The discerning wisdom to know right from wrong. And that they would be drawn towards it. So help us to be ready to give away that wisdom because it is desirable to the rest of the world. It is desirable to our community in Oakdale. God, as you continue to open the eyes of the hearts of community of Oakdale, may they see living hopers. May they see other believers in Christ as those that are operating on a different level of wisdom. So help living hopers share that. Share that message of hope. We thank you. We thank you for the fact that you granted Solomon that wisdom. And for the things that we ask that you grant us, God, may we use them to the best of our abilities. We put it to practice right away, God. We love you, Father. You are so great. Pray that you bless Living Hope this week as we continue to go with you into the world. In your precious name we pray. Amen.